California's Supreme Court has overturned the capital punishment sentence for convicted Scott Peterson. Peterson has been on death row for killing his pregnant wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor in 2002 in Northern California. The court ruled some jurors in his trial were incorrectly dismissed, partly because of their opposition to the death penalty. California's high court still upheld the murder conviction. The case now goes back to a lower court to determine a new penalty or if they will retry the death penalty phase for Scott Peterson. Joining us now with more on this and what it means moving forward is criminal defense attorney and KUSI contributor Vikas Bajaj. Vic, good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you.
Good to see you. I wish it were under better circumstances. So explain exactly for everyone why this judge ruled that because potential jurors had expressed their opposition to the death penalty and they were dismissed, that this is now cause to overturn the death penalty conviction.
Well, thank you, and a great question for everybody to know about, Lauren, and I appreciate that. There's really a two-step process when we are selecting jurors to sit on a jury trial. The first step is to find out what their prejudices may be, and that's what their biases may be. Maybe they don't like police officers, maybe they do. Maybe they believe everyone sitting in the defendant's chair is guilty, maybe they don't. And we need to excise that information and extract it. The second part is, notwithstanding the personal biases, are you willing to follow the law? And that's where the trial judge tripped over his own feet in the case. In that case, they asked the question on whether these potential jurors were pro or con or against, as we would say, the death penalty. Many of them said, I just don't believe in the death penalty, and some of those are based on religious beliefs and otherwise. The second question that was presented to these jurors who answered that they were not pro-death penalty was, are you still willing to follow the law? Now, some of these jurors said, yes, Your Honor, we are willing to follow the law. Notwithstanding that answer, the judge kicked these potential jurors off of the jury panel, and the Peterson defense moved this case through the appellate process and finally to our most extreme appellate court, which is the California Supreme Court, which now said, well, the second part is what matters. Despite their personal biases, they still said they were able to follow the law, and that's what matters. So now it goes back to the trial court to have them address that issue and potentially an entirely new death penalty phase of the trial.
Okay, so really it was that finite detail, that the fact that the jurors said they would be willing to impose the death penalty and consider that under the law, even though they were against it personally. So now are we just going to see that the sentencing part of the phase take place again? Is that what you think is likely to happen next?
Yes, the guilt or innocence phase still stands. The Supreme Court of California found that there's no issue with the finding of guilt. The only issue is whether the jury was unduly affected by the judge's decisions. So in a death penalty case, we have the first phase, which is whether the person is guilty or innocent. And then we have the second phase, which is what is the punishment, either death or the only alternative, which is life without parole. But Lauren, you bring up a very interesting point. And as we know, Governor Newsom in our state of California last year overrode the voters' position. In the 2016, we, the voters, voted to instate and reinstate the death penalty. Governor Newsom said, well, his personal opinions would trump that issue, and he said, we're going to have a moratorium. So in essence, a death penalty verdict would be a fictitious victory. It would cause tremendous heartache and headache for the victim's family in this case, because they would have to testify as to the effect of the loss. Now, the caveat to that is the district attorney in this district where the jury trial was held is pro-capital punishment, pro-death penalty. So there may be a signature victory and a symbolic victory in seeking the death penalty. My gut feeling tells me that the judge who's going to have this case on remand back at this hot potato in his lap again is going to say, look, prosecutor, look, defense team, why don't you just agree to life without parole? Why don't you stipulate to it? It's not worth the time, it's not worth the effort, and it surely isn't worth living through that heartache again on behalf of the family.
Yeah, it's it's hard to think about what the family is going through at this point in time. You know, it's been 15 years, and still, I imagine the pain is still as fresh as ever. So what sort of implications do you think this is going to have in death penalty cases moving forward?
Well, you know, as some of our viewers may know, I was on a death penalty, anti-death penalty clinic at University of Texas, a very pro-death penalty state in the union. And so I have quite a bit of insight into this. And that insight tells me that it's really politics that will dictate the outcome in a case like this. Very little do the facts have any force and effect. And what I mean by that is, you know, just last week we had the sentencing of the person now known as the Golden State Killer. 70 years old, but was convicted of a number of different crimes after pleading guilty to 13 murders and hundreds of other heinous offenses attached to those murders. And the court there last week, as we watched the testimony, listened to the heartache and the horrible tragedy that was put upon each one of these victims' families. It was a week of just gut-wrenching testimony of decades of suffering. And in that case, there was a stipulation for life without parole. There was no death penalty even on the table. So politically, I would say the umbrella over the state of California now is very anti-death penalty. That combined with the fact that the headache and the heartache to this family to spill their emotions out to the judge and to the jury if they have another trial in order to seek the death penalty may just be an opportunity cost, not really worth it at the end of the day.
Well, Vikas Bajaj, appreciate your expertise as always and explaining it to us. Certainly, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much. It was great to see you.
You too.